Lisa's dad travels a lot for work, leaving her alone in their home. It had never bothered her, but something was different this time. Hi, my name is Shar, and this is the And Other Stories podcast, where I read stories of the supernatural and criminal, both real and fictional, works of fiction written by me. Don't run up the stairs. You know that feeling you get when you need to run up the stairs in the dark? That's how it had always been for me. I don't remember the first time I did it, but I must have been very small. "Don't run up the stairs!" my dad would shout after me as I sprinted from step to step, and as I grew, taking them two at a time. I was never sure what made me do it. That unnameable fear in the pit of your stomach, a primal fear of the monster in the dark, of the danger that lies unseen. Silly, childish fears, easily dismissed. I had been in this house with my dad since I was born. My mum had left when I was a baby. I didn't know where she had gone and I didn't care. My dad was all I needed. We were the stereotypical father and daughter who did everything together, hiking, swimming, going for a run. But most evenings you could find us camped out on the sofa, a giant bowl of popcorn between us, snuggled under a blanket watching a movie. My childhood was idyllic. That all changed after I went to high school. My dad got a new job, still with the same firm, but he would have to go out and meet clients now. Just local, he'd promised. He might get home late sometimes, but he'd be home by bedtime. Then it was just after bedtime, but he promised he would be in to kiss me goodnight. It went on like this for a few years, and by the time I was 16, he would often be away for 2 days straight. I was alone a lot. The silence would be so complete that sometimes I could hear my own heartbeat. My friends would come over occasionally, but it's not like they could stay late on a school night. By 9, it would just be me again. I would make sure the downstairs was tidy before turning off all the lights and darting up the stairs, heart pounding, not daring to look behind me. When I was 12, we moved to the other end of the town. A bigger house, but nothing too fancy. The thing my dad said he liked about it was that it was modern. This translated in my head to mean it was built in strange ways. The main living room had a tall ceiling, giving it the feel of an old church. The stairs wound up the wall at the opposite end from the TV and all the furniture. At the top of the stairs was my new bedroom, which shared a wall with the living room, but had a big hole cut into it in a sort of slanted rectangle shape, so that if you went over to it, you could see down into the living room. I suppose this was to be an attractive feature of the house, keeping it open and spacious. I just saw it as a gaping void, a blank space that always drew your eye to it and played tricks with your peripheral vision. Over all the years, I never got used to my dad going away. I thought that one day it would just become the norm, and I would just go about my daily routine like it was nothing. But the emptiness of the house started to mess with my head. It started as just a quick trick of the light. I was sitting flicking through the channels one night. The sun had gone down while I watched TV and the room had darkened without me noticing. Each press of the button on the remote control plunged the room into pitch blackness for the tiniest fraction of a second. The canned laughter and ringing of game show buzzers flashed on and off with the light. I had almost got to the end of all the 600-odd channels that we have when I heard a shout of, "Don't!" It had sounded so much like my father's voice that I quickly tried to go back a couple of channels to find where it had come from. But I found nothing. Just renovation shows and music videos. I resumed my boring trawl through the channels. Flash, flash, flash. Until during one split-second blackout, the side of my eye caught a shape. A tall shadow standing right at the window. My heart leapt into my throat while the blaring siren from a police show echoed around the room. I was frozen to the sofa, staring right at the spot I had seen the shadow. It didn't move. The shadow stayed completely still as I slowly edged off the sofa, my eyes never leaving the window. The TV continued to flash the pale blue light into the room, fading darker toward the high ceiling. As I reached the wall, my hand groped around for the light switch. Finding only blank wall, I quickly glanced down to find it, flicked it on and looked back to the window. There was nothing. No shadow, just the garden as it always looked. I watched my own reflection in the window as I walked tentatively forward. I walked right up to the glass, my nose touching it, my hands cupping my face so as to see better out into the darkness. My breath steamed up the shiny surface, my gasps of air coming fast as my heartbeat began to slow. It must have been a trick of the light. There was nothing there. Rubbing my eyes with tiredness, I turned away from the window, determined to go to bed before my overactive imagination showed me anything else. But just as I looked back at the window one more time, I saw it. A fleeting glimpse in the fading condensation from my breath, a number 7 drawn on the window. Dad came back the day after that, and I didn't mention it to him. Almost seeing a shadow and thinking I saw a number on the window didn't seem like much of a story to tell. I didn't see much of him anyway. As soon as he was home, he was back into his office to work some more. More trips to plan, more time away. It seemed like I'd only seen him a few times before he was kissing me on the top of the head, telling me to be good, and flying off somewhere again. This time I made arrangements with my friend to stay with her for a couple of days. The house was too big, dark, and quiet on my own. I couldn't handle another 3 nights there. I'd stay with Helen for a couple of nights. My dad would be home in the early hours of the 3rd night anyway. I could deal with that. We had a blast. We watched horror movies and I laughed at the ridiculous plot lines. We dared each other to do prank phone calls. I had practically completely forgotten about my worries of being alone in the house. My fears seemed so silly now. By the time I got back to the house, I was shattered. We hadn't exactly got much sleep. We'd been having too much fun. I decided to just go in, grab a quick shower, and go to bed. Then by the time I woke up, Dad would be home. The sun had already set. I ditched my bag in the hall, turned right into the huge dark living room, deliberately not looking into the room, and ran up the stairs onto the top landing and into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. As I turned on the shower and started to undress, I calmed down. The bathroom was long, with a bench, sink, and long counter on one side. A claw-footed bath and a shower cubicle recessed into the wall on the other. A large light had been installed into the ceiling, but I rarely used it. I preferred to use the lights around the mirror. They were old-fashioned bulbs all around the glass, like movie stars used to do their makeup. It was less harsh. The glow of the light and the steam were comforting in a familiar way. The mirror was directly across from the shower, and when I stepped into the cubicle and drew the opaque white shower curtain across, it lit up. I lost myself in the ritual of showering. Lathering up my hair, I let my mind wander and make plans for the rest of the week. I had a lot of work to do for school. Helen and I hadn't exactly done much homework. As I turned to rinse and the water cascaded down over my ears, I almost thought I heard a soft click-clunk of a door closing. I tipped my head forward, my breath catching in my chest. I swallowed hard. It had been hard to tell with the noise of the shower. Just to be sure, I reached out behind me, groping for the knob to shut off the water. It slowed to a trickle, and then just a few short drips before silence. I stood in the sudden cold, straining hard to listen, and then I heard it. The long, slow draw of breath in and out, coming from the other side of the shower curtain. My heart jumped to a stuttering stampede. I was frozen in one spot, my ice-filled mind unable to think of what action to take next. I started to reach out one shaking, dripping hand to the edge of the shower curtain, when a tall, dark shadow suddenly loomed into view, the size and shape of a 6-foot-tall man. I jumped backwards, slipping and slamming my back hard into the cold tile of the cubicle wall, just as the silence was splintered by a deafening scream from the figure on the other side of the curtain. "Don't run!" I screamed and fell to the hard floor, throwing my arms over my head. Another click and loud clunk of a door, and the shadow was gone. I trembled as I tore the curtain aside, hardly able to stand, breathing coming in sharp gasps. The room was empty, the steam still lingering in the air like a dense fog. I scrambled to keep myself steady, grasping onto the counter to keep from fainting as I reached out to the door. It wouldn't budge, the sliding bolt lock still in place on this side of the door as I had left it. I looked around the room in bewilderment, noticing as I did the condensation on the mirror and written through the droplets a clear number 4. The police were still there when my father got home. There was no sign of forced entry, and they became obviously sceptical when I told them about the lock on the bathroom door. After a few bland reassurances about investigating and a hushed conversation with my dad about not leaving me alone so much, they left. My dad was horrified at first, but then he bore the same expression as the policeman. He didn't believe me either. "It's okay," he says. "I'm not away for another few weeks. I'll get some stuff from the guys at work. Alarms, some of those new locks for the doors. They're the strongest in the business, and some of the cameras installed. You'll be absolutely safe, I promise." Nearly every day after that, he was showing me some gizmo or other that was to keep me safe in the house. I smiled and feigned interest, knowing that none of this will make me feel safe. Not being alone is the thing that would make me feel safe. But soon it was the night before he was due to leave. No amount of pleading from me would change anything. He only said in his soft, patronising voice that it would all be all right, that he'd only be gone a few days. In defeat, I raced up the stairs to my bedroom. I lay there in the dark, my wide eyes trained on the dark hole in the wall. My mind kept wandering back to the incident in the bathroom, the blood-curdling scream that had come from the shadowy figure. It had been difficult at the time to register anything other than fear, but the sound kept coming to me in the silence. It was the sound of a man's voice, the sound of my father's voice. I am dreaming. I can just tell. Everything is soft, and it is impossible to focus on one thing. I walk with slow, heavy steps. I am in the living room. It is dark and cold. I try to see, to find my way, but all I can see are the patio doors. I take one heavy step forward and stumble over something. I slowly bend down to see what it is and recoil in horror. A woman with wide, staring, lifeless eyes lies on the ground. Blood trickles from the corner of her mouth. As the room brightens, I can see more and more of the floor around me. It is littered with bloodied and detached limbs. Bodies lie in piles. Screams begin to slowly fill the room. The light flickers and glows orange. A fire has sprung up from what looks like a twisted pile of metal. I carry on walking forward through the wreckage, toward the patio doors. A figure walks out in front of me, looking down, surveying the carnage around us. As I get near to him, he looks up. His skin melts off his face. One eye hangs out of its socket. His torso is slashed and bloodied. He looks straight into my eyes, and a menacing, evil grin stretches across his face as he starts to advance toward me. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I try to run. I turn away from him and desperately try to get my legs to move faster, away, towards the stairs. I feel a cold hand grasp my ankle, and I fall helpless to the ground. Looking up to the ceiling, I see, dripping blood, a huge number 3. The figure grabs me and spins me round, yelling and spitting blood in my face. "Don't run up the stairs!" I wake up screaming. It is still not even midnight, but I run to my dad's room and frantically shake him awake. Tears have streamed down onto my cheeks, and my dad turns on the bedside lamp, confused and disorientated. "Lisa, what's wrong? What's happened?" he says, slurring with sleep. "Don't go, Dad, please," I beg. "What? Go?" "Don't go away tomorrow. Stay. I have a really bad feeling. Please." "Lisa, honey, come on. We've talked about this. It'll be fine. Come on now. Go back to bed." "Please, Dad. I just had this dream and I..." "A dream, Lisa. Now come on. I'm not going to cancel this trip for a dream." "But I'm serious now. Go back to bed." His fatigue was making him grumpy, but seeing the look on my face, he added, "It's okay. It was just a bad dream. Do you want me to take you back to your room?" "No, it's okay," I say, thinking through what he was saying. "Night." I was starting to calm down after I'd been awake and spoken to my dad. The weird things that had been happening had clearly got the better of me. Even my dreams were scaring me now. I fell back into bed and didn't dream again that night. It wasn't until this afternoon that my dad kissed me on the head and left for his business trip. I'd been to school and returned in time to see him off. My dream is still giving me a strange feeling, but I put that to the back of my mind and start to make dinner and do homework and try to stay as normal as possible. The smell of dinner is homely and comforting as I sit on the sofa once more flicking through the channels. The oven dings just as I land on a news channel. Oh well, never mind, I'll be back in a minute to change it. As I'm crossing to the doorway, something catches my attention. They're talking about a plane crash. The reporter stands amongst the rubble. Sounds of sirens and the roar of fires. Yes, that's what we're hearing. Reports now of all 156 passengers and crew on board have been killed. The Boeing 737 crashed shortly after takeoff from Edinburgh. That's once again all 156 passengers and crew on board have been killed on the flight from Edinburgh to Paris, flight number 743. My heart is suddenly clamped in an icy fist of fear. I stumble through to the kitchen and slam my hand onto the fridge, wrenching down the poster that shows my dad's flight number. Edinburgh to Paris, 743. Backing slowly away, the paper falls from my hand. A freezing numbness is spreading from my face down to my lungs, paralysing me. I have the strongest urge to run, to flee. I take off from the kitchen, through the hall, into the living room, and sprint up the stairs 2 at a time. Just as I'm near the top, a scream strikes through the air and hits me like lightning. Don't run up the stairs! And the shadow figure emerges from the edge of the room, grinning malevolently up at me. I gasp as if I have jumped into an icy lake. My foot catches on the top step, and I fall, head first, 20 feet, onto the marble floor below. Thank you for listening. I hope you liked it. I am Shar, and this was the And Other Stories podcast. See you next time.